50 years ago this month, an historic event proved that humans could land on the moon. Many hands played a role in making that mission a success, including retired Eastman Kodak Electronics engineer and scientist Arthur Cosgrove. In the mid to late 60s, Cosgrove was directly involved with the Lunar Orbiter program, which helped navigate ideal landing sites for Apollo 11 through mapping the moon's surface. Cosgrove and WXXI News Director Randy Gorban, who has been reporting on the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, join me now to discuss where we've been and what we have yet to explore. And welcome to you both. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Lynn.
So Art, you're in your early 20s, you're at Kodak, and you were working on all 5 of the Lunar Orbiter program missions. And I have to know, Randy filled me in, you were interested at first in a career in accounting. So how did someone who is interested in that switch over and work on an incredible project?
I ended up starting my college career at Canisius College, and I was in business administration, accounting, and I found that I was getting bored to death by cost accounting to the point where I had to do something to change my ways. It was taking me about a 6-pack of beer to do a case study. And so I started over essentially, except for my liberal arts and so forth, philosophy and so on, to in electrical engineering.
Wow. Well, you and your colleagues, you created a camera that took more than 2,000 high-resolution images of the moon's surface to help determine the best landing site for Apollo 11. And I read a comment that you made in an interview, and you said, "We were making it up as we were going along." So talk a little bit about what was that experience like for you?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of structure, at least in my opinion, to the early days of NASA, and the technology and the people running everything were contractors, essentially. So Kodak had won a contract which was based on some earlier military technologies, to build a spacecraft to go to the moon and to photograph the front and the back side of the moon. NASA had mission control based in Jet Propulsion Laboratories, and most of the people there, not all of them, but most of them were, again, contractors. And they were various people who had some interest and knowledge about space and so forth. So it was an interesting experience for me. During operations, I was based at one of the deep space stations. I started my career at Kodak testing the systems for about 6 months. I ended up in the winter of '66, spending the winter in Seattle, where we went to quote-unquote spacecraft school. Somebody asked me the other night, how did they integrate all of these people? And the way really was, we went to spacecraft school together. We got to know one another. We spent the winter in Seattle, and then we went down from there to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, and got to know many of the people there, at least in a more superficial sense maybe than the group that we were involved in up in Seattle. But then we were dispatched there were 3 Kodak engineers, one at each of the deep space stations. There were 3 in the Deep Space Network, 3 stations around the world, one in Woomera, Australia, which is in the southern part of the Simpson Desert, and the northern part of the state of South Australia. There was one in Spain, Robledo, which was maybe an hour's drive. At the time, it was an hour anyway. Drive out of Madrid. You couldn't really live closer because there wasn't a whole lot of places to stay.
Well, I have to ask you, when you saw those first images that were taken, what went through your head?
Wow. I mean, the thing is working. It's working well. Yeah. It was. The spacecraft was fairly complex in that it was a photographic system that was returning all of the images by video, a television system. It was a unique custom slow scan, they called it, with a frequency a bandwidth of about 230 megahertz, and at the 3 dB down point.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting system, and we recorded it back to film. Mm-hmm. And I might add there was an Ampex recorder on each site as well, very early, and it was used for recording mostly the command bits to the spacecraft and so forth.
Well, Randy, you had an opportunity to interview Art, and this is part of the coverage that you've been doing. It's in conjunction with the American Experience. So talk a little bit about kind of how you're approaching these unique stories and this interesting architectural, connection that we have here.
Helene, I do, as you may know, I do a lot of business news locally, and I was just fascinated to find out about the Rochester connection. We kind of joke about that a lot with news stories in this town, but really there truly was a very important connection. Art is one example, sitting with us this morning. Other people that have been involved with the project include another engineer I talked to, Jeff Wynn, and I also talked to folks with what is now called Harris. It's actually the name changed, Harris Corporation, recently merged with another company, but these folks have been involved in this kind of technology for years, and when the American Experience folks at PBS said we're going to be doing these specials, we'd like to see if local stations would like to do something kind of companion pieces, and that's when I started researching. Obviously the Kodak connection was an easy one to come upon, because I knew that the early photos of the moon, and this is important stuff. This wasn't just let's take some tourist type photos of the moon. They had to know exactly what that surface looked like, and then decide what would be a safe landing site for the lunar module to land on. And Art, I think is a little modest when he talks about these things, but these were 5 successful satellites, which were very complex for the time, and really, I think, Art, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they pretty much photographed almost the entire surface of the moon, the entire thing.
That's correct.
Well, let's take a moment. You also spoke with Steve Fentress, and he is the director of the Strassenberg Planetarium at the Rochester Museum and Science Center. They're hosting Eagle Has Landed at the museum. Let's check out that interview.
We have a show called The Eagle Has Landed, in which you will be inside the lunar module with Aldrin and Armstrong, hearing their conversations with Mission Control, the actual recording, with a recreation, an accurate recreation of what they saw out the window as they were landing.
Eagle, you're looking great. Coming up 9 minutes. We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good.
The alarms that were coming from the guidance computer while the fuel was running low.
I understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. Stop alarm. 1201. 1201. Rocket 1201. Okay, we're go. Same time. We're go.
This is a big event. It's a major achievement in human history, and we're always looking for something that we can contribute uniquely with our technology and our environment. The new technology we have here at the Strassenberg, just since we reopened in January, will enable you to experience this in a new and different way we've never been able to do before, and I don't think you're going to get anywhere else. We can accurately project the view from inside the lunar module with the accurate lunar landscape as seen outside the window as Armstrong and Aldrin were descending toward the surface. And you will be able to hear their conversations with Mission Control and the conversations between the Mission Control flight director and his assistants about how to handle these computer alarms. It was really quite tense and pretty exciting to hear.
Roger 1202, we copy it.
And there was an engineer back in Mission Control in Houston, 26 years old, who had a 24-year-old assistant who knew that computer well enough to say it's okay to ignore the alarm and continue to descend. So we hear that conversation going on in the moments before they had to decide whether to give up and turn back. The programs had to be written very economically. There's no fancy user interface or swiping or mice or anything like that. It's typing in numbers that the computers need. And they were working right on the ragged edge of what this computer was able to do, guiding the lunar module to the moon. And let's not forget, getting them home again, which is the other extremely important part. So you could say that the lessons of that era really pushed our national ability to make computers and make them do things, and that this is like the very beginning seed of the capabilities we have now.
100 feet, 3.5 down, 9 forward.
This was a special event in that it was the entire United States pooling everything it had, academic prowess, industrial power, all of it, to achieve one thing together.
60 seconds. Lights on.
And this was the moment that it reached its culmination. And that's a kind of a unique thing. There have been only a few times in human history, and not recently, when the United States has decided to do that. This is what we want to show the new generation, is that this is another way to go, besides just personal gratification, is put it all together on one huge project.
30 seconds. Forward.
We will do our show, The Eagle Has Landed, several times back to back on the 20th. And since it includes a reenactment of the last moments for the landing, there will be one performance that will happen 50 years to the minute after the actual landing. So you'll be able to sit here and relive the landing 50 years to the moment after it happened.
Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent.
It's very important in human history. It's very important in the history of the country. And I've been in the planetarium business long enough to see how the public attitude toward this has evolved. I think now at 50 years, we have a perspective where it's more respected than it has been in the past. So this is going to be very interesting to see a new generation coming in and possibly appreciating this even more than it was appreciated back in the 70s.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Tranquility.
Art, there are a number of ambitious future space missions that people have been talking about. What stands out most to you that you think can actually happen?
What I think is going to happen is that it's going to take a while to get to Mars. And while man will go back to the moon, what are we going to do there? Are we going to mine? Is it going to become a military outpost? What exactly are we going to do there? It's a hostile environment. Space is a very hostile environment. And
All right.
you got to ask, how much should we be spending on it as well?
We have to close. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but a special thank you to my guests for joining me. And you can learn more about the festivities to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 on our website, wxxinews.org.